Yeah, very good point, very good question. Of course, I would start with saying that, of course, it's not as easy as setting up business in London or even somewhere in the US where you can do it overnight, online. You don't even have to be there, right? So that's definitely not the case. You have to be on the ground if you want to run a business in China, just to be able to even navigate the regulatory stuff and the changing environment. It's easier. So basically, I started a company in Shenzhen basically recently, so I can tell you exactly the specific timelines and what I had to do. So I first set up a company in Hong Kong, which is which is very close from Shenzhen. Of course, it operates differently, and there you can set up a company online. It takes 24 hours to get it done. If you want to get a bank account, though, you need to go to Hong Kong. You need to be there physically. You cannot just do it online, because there was a lot of frauds and they had a lot of these things and money laundering, stuff and regulation that they basically decided, hey, we need to limit this. And so we only allow people that are here physically doing the business. They can prove that you have business here, then, they will allow you to set up the business. So that's one thing, right? And then Shenzhen, if you set up a company from scratch as an individual, myself, included, then company setup is very easy. So it takes maybe 2 weeks. It's not overnight, but you just hire an agent. You don't even have to go there. You just give them your documents. You give them your passport. You give them, your visa. Maybe sometimes, they need to kind of understand what kind of business, of course, you're going to be running. So you need to choose from all those different things, and you need to just do that stuff. And then the agent will handle everything. So you don't really have to show up. You only have to show up at the end when they're just about to open the company, because you need to, they of course need to see that you're a real person, right? Again, you have to be on the ground. You cannot do it online, but it takes maybe 2 weeks. Bank account is slightly more difficult or maybe timely, because it takes maybe a month or month and a half to get it done, because there is certain regulation and there's certain things that, probably when I say it, you will be like, how is this possible, right? I was shaking my head many times in China, because I also come from the European background and my father works for German companies. So everything has to be according to certain plan. If it's not done like that, then it's a problem, right? And so in China, it unfortunately doesn't work like that, it still depends what kind of person is sitting behind the counter. And, if they're in a good mood, if they're not in a good mood, if, whatever happens, the biggest risk, and I will tell you, this is something that if you want to do business in China, you have to include this type of risk and potential cost into the business model. And that's, the political stuff, right? Which is something that, yes, many people don't like it. I don't like it either, because it's something that I cannot affect. I have nothing to do with. But let's say if Czech government will do something that China doesn't like, says something against something that, either COVID or, Hong Kong or Taiwan or all these different things that you have probably heard about, then it can affect the Czech businesses in China, and, they will not, I wouldn't say that they will shut you down. Of course, that's not like that, but suddenly things will become harder for you. So if you need to get a license, you may wait longer, and they will maybe ask for 3 other things, to maybe 3 other documents before they actually release it, right? So this could happen, and so this is the unpredictability that you have to kind of count with if you're doing business in China. My gut feeling tells me that it's similar in most of the, or not most, but many of the other Asian countries, and maybe Akash can speak for India. But, I think I have friends doing business in Indonesia. I have friends doing business in Philippines. I have friends doing business in Vietnam. And I think there is always this type of thing that, there is certain things that you cannot predict fully, that even though there is a certain, regulation or things, it can just get out of hand sometimes, that it doesn't really follow step by step, so this can happen. And this is something that you have to count on. That's one of the biggest risks, I would say, that unfortunately you cannot fully manage. And you need to have certain plan Bs for these types of situations, how you handle that. And usually local Chinese partner local Chinese company can help with that. That's why you need to be on the ground and you need to have those relationships so that they can help you navigate this ecosystem when it happens. So, this is just kind of like a very practical point for anybody who is kind of maybe thinking about doing something in China.
I don't know about your time frame, but if we can extend a little, Simon would have a question.
Yeah, I have time. Yeah, let's definitely do it. If people still have questions, I would be happy to answer.
I'm seriously thankful because the TikTok guy canceled the session literally 90 minutes ago. So we would have had a second session with someone from HR in TikTok, and he canceled 90 minutes ago. So you have to raise the red flag. And until then, thank you so much for your time. Simon, your question.
I'm really excited about this session because I can relate to a lot of things. I worked and lived in China for more than a year, but this was 10 years ago. And of course, a lot of things changed, but I can relate. What I am really curious about, but also a little bit worried, is the Chinese social credit system. So the system where the state gives you a grade, whether you're a good citizen and not, and many services are tied to that. But I don't hear a lot about how far implemented it is, and also how does it influence an average Chinese person? Can you elaborate on that a bit?
I also have a question about that, which I'll ask after, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I think again, it's similar case with the currency, because I have heard quite a bit of talking and media articles about the same topic, and from my understanding, again, it exists, and they have been running certain tests in certain areas of China, but it's not implemented that like every single person is currently, especially local Chinese citizens are currently in the system, and they're getting bonus points or not, or negative points for like crossing the street on a red light, right? Like I don't see that. Like none of my Chinese friends talk about it, right? Like what happens is that yeah, certainly there are certain measures, like when you cross the street in a place like Shenzhen and you do it repeatedly on a red light, they will either like publicly shame you, that they will take a picture of you and they will put it in some database, whatever. I've never seen the database, but this is supposedly something that already happens. Or actually, which is interesting, is that sometimes because in China, and I don't know how it works actually in Europe, I would be very curious about that. I never really studied this, but basically everything is connected to your mobile phone number in China. So mobile phone number is basically like your ID, like every single thing. Like if you download an app and you want to get into the app, you need to connect your mobile phone number and you need to verify it through an SMS number to get in, right? You can use WeChat, but WeChat is connected to your mobile phone number, right? So everything is kind of connected to the mobile phone number. And so, what sometimes happens with these things, that like, you would hear news or you would hear certain cities, it's not like implemented nationally, but certain cities would say, hey, if you cross the street on a red light, and because they have these kind of databases, they can figure out who you are. And especially if you, for example, do it regularly, I guess, then they will send you fine directly, to your WeChat, and they will say, hey, you need to pay a fine. We know who you are, we know what you did, and you need to pay a fine because you should not be doing this thing. So this is some of the thing that they do. And again, I wouldn't say that this is something that China necessarily wants to hide. Like when you go to Huawei, when you actually when you go for a tour, they will show you these like smart city systems that they run for the governments, right, for different cities. They will show you how they're monitoring, how they're seeing if the traffic, and even if there is any emergency or some floods or something, they basically monitor everything 24/7. And they have a different systems, emergency systems, and of course cameras are part of that, right? So that's really like how they view the next generation of a city. The city where, of course, safety number one, because if you have cameras everywhere, like nobody will probably commit a crime, unless they figure out a system how to get around it. Some, type of Hollywood series that they just, cut cut the cameras, but I guess that's pretty unlikely here. So, you know, you don't really see police on the street in China. You know, you don't really have that kind of feeling. Like sometimes when you go, you know, in the US or in Europe, sometimes, you know, you just see police cars and policemen, you know, kind of making sure or driving around. You don't really see that in China, you know. And so these are some of the aspects, I would say, you know, that again, people look at it differently, but when you consider that maybe the number one goal or the number one thing that they try to achieve with this is different than what we have in our mind, then, you know, maybe you will kind of understand why it's happening. But back to the credit score system, yes, it's not really implemented, as I know. The score that is implemented is basically the same as we have, the credit card score, you know, so that's tied to your, you know, Alipay. And at least in the US, you know, people have it, or, you know, it's quite common, is that, you know, as you basically use the services, as you pay for stuff, as you get loans and you repay or not repay, or if you know, use some service and you pay for the deposit and then you destroy the bike and, you know, you run away, then basically that affects your score. And it, of course, kind of, you know, it helps you to get a loan, or, you know, it prevents you from getting a loan for, let's say, a mortgage, etc. So that's something that that people have. Of course, every single person have it within their WeChat or Alipay app, but the credit score system, I have never really seen it implemented, or I don't see anyone in my circles talking about it.